Hello and welcome to episode 19 of Subplot A Course, a podcast discussing a new science fiction literary work on the second Tuesday of every month by casual fans just like you. I'm Stavros, and with me is someone that wishes JRPGs were real-life training simulators, Charlie. Say hi, Charlie.
I mean, if just picking the same command over and over again made you stronger, then yeah, sure.
And Charlie teaches math. And also with me is Vincent, who is investigating the link between video gaming proficiency and delusions of grandeur. Say hi, Vincent.
I'm extremely good at video games.
Makes a lot of sense. Vincent's an epidemiologist. And finally with us is John, who commonly forgets to include cockpits in his aircraft designs. Say hi, John.
Hey, don't forget, I also forget seatbelts, exhaust ports, pretty much anything.
You don't need them if it's a drone.
Wings?
What if they're in space, you don't need wings, right?
I forget a lot of things. You need wings in space.
Yeah, you need speakers in space too. And
speakers.
lighters and fire.
It's true. All right, and John is an aerospace engineer. And today we're talking about Armada, written by Ernest Cline and published in 2015. And of course, you should be prepared for spoilers. So the plot of this novel, Zach Lightman, his senior year of high school is disrupted when he finds out that Armada, one of his favorite video games, is actually a training simulator used by the secret Earth Defense Alliance to prepare humanity for the invasion of hostile aliens thought to be from Jupiter's moon Europa. As Zach is one of the top Armada players, he's recruited into the EDA, along with many others, as the invasion from Europa is imminent. There, he discovers that his father, whom he thought was killed in a freak accident, was actually a huge video game / pop culture nerd in the 80s and was actually recruited ahead of him. Zach begins piloting the EDA drones in the initial combat encounters against the Europans. During this time, Zach starts noticing a trend with the aliens where they are clearly giving the human forces the opportunity to barely win each engagement. It eventually comes out that upon discovering the evidence of intelligence on Europa, Earth attempted a preemptive nuclear strike, and since then the alien intelligence has been testing Earth to see how destructive humans would be. After averting a cataclysmic strike on Europa that would have proved humanity's aggressiveness, Zach is contacted by an intelligence from a starfaring group of civilizations, extending them an invitation to join since they have passed the test, which Zach then accepts on behalf of Earth. So, obviously, this is the guy who wrote Ready Player One, so there's a little bit of similarities there between the two novels. But the first thing I wanted to talk about is kind of midway through the book. Things go from Zach kind of discovering that his video game is real to getting involved in the conflict, and then there's a sudden tonal shift where, suddenly people are dying and he starts getting news that millions of people are killed on Earth, during these alien attacks. And for me, that was a little bit jarring just because, it goes from this, everyone's flying drones and there's no real danger going on. It all seems very far away, and then suddenly it changes and that guy gets crushed in front of him by an alien drone, if you guys recall, when they're escaping the moon base and, Shanghai's under siege and millions of people are dying. Did that kind of strike you guys as odd? Kind of the jump from video games are real, LOL, to, oh man, millions of people are dying.
I didn't mind it that much, but the tonal shift plus the twist at the end made me no. I have more issues with it being oh, there's a twist and the whole thing was just don't be jerks or whatever. I don't know. We'll talk about it later now.
It's jarring. It's jarring.
So I guess I'll get into it now, because even as I was reading it, I was okay, I'm fine with this getting real, but you know what they better not do? They better not do the, it's just a test, and you know what? We have to overcome us being jerks, even though we're being slaughtered in the streets, and that's exactly what the book does. It's okay, I was fine with the tonal shift, given they don't do the ending I thought they were going to do, which is exactly what they did.
Okay, well, that's interesting. So let's go ahead and talk about the twist now. So, for me personally, it does, the twist kind of happens after the book kind of gets real with people getting killed in front of his face and things like that. For me, it was the one redeeming factor of the novel was the twist that comes with the aliens actually testing Earth. I thought he was going to go just straight ahead with the the aliens are predictable because of the video game for some reason. And he does hint at the twist coming from a mile away, kind of everywhere in the book. So I found it kind of to be the one saving grace where I was like, okay, this book may glorify gamer culture and all that kind of stuff. But the twist, actually does a moderate job of redeeming the novel towards the end.
It's kind of my same issue with Ready Player One, the other novel by this author, where I'm just like, if this were real, in that book, the corporation would have figured out everything in 2 months and the plot of the book would have never happened. Because there's no way it's like, the random gamer's better than like the entire government and world working together for this. Whereas it's kind of like, oh no, only he could have figured it out. Whereas clearly the entire scientific community and everyone's been going like, hey guys, we're sorry, let's not blow them up. But the aliens, nope, it had to be that random guy blew up that random thing at the very, very end is the only reason they stopped killing us. Not our immediate apologies and like, please don't kill us.
It's the one farm boy from Tatooine that could pull off the 1 in a million shot. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's not even that. There's the difference between that, which is, typical chosen one things, versus the, like, I'm so cool, only I could figure out the twist.
Yeah, that's fair.
Type twist, which is, whereas, it's like the entire scientific community and government is too, like, the government's too blind with its own power to figure it out.
Okay.
They really telegraphed the inevitability of him being the one to figure it out way too soon. We got to a part where he's like, oh my gosh, this is all, I'm not a this is not a video game, this is for real. And then the general turns to him and says, come on, didn't you think that you have nothing left to live for? This is, the thing that your whole life has been leading to. And he's like, yeah, I guess so. And I'm like, what? Fuck, this is ridiculous.
Like, I think in the first half where it's like him figuring out, oh, it's a giant conspiracy where the game is maybe really real and he's figuring out his dad maybe did something like that. Like, that I was fine with. Like, that's the premise of the novel, right? It's the latter half twist where it's kind of like, no, it's not just that he's good at games and now he's a grunt and just has to survive, but it's like, nope, he's the one that figures out the twist that the random civilization set up for them, even though, was he the only one who thought it was inherently obvious?
But I really want to focus, like, does the twist help the book? Is it just predictable? Like, oh god, I saw this coming a mile away, or does it actually assist your enjoyment of the book at all?
In my opinion, if that twist had not been there, it would have been a cheesy version of Ender's Game. Like, straight up, the book is just Ender's Game, where you have, like, a bunch of kids playing a video game, thinking that it's not for real, and it ends up being, oh shit, it is for real, and we're the best people in the world because we're little kids and we're very good at this thing. Without the twist, which is actually still very similar to Ender's Game, because if you read the future versions of Ender's Game, which is basically, oh, well, we got in this war on accident, like, we didn't really want to fight, we kind of want to be in peace. Except Ender's Game, they have like Dr. Device. Here you have the Icebreaker. They have exact same like weapon, like planet-destroying devices. Mm-hmm. Humans, in this book, they pull back and show, oh yeah, we're peaceful. In that book, like, they kill the bugs, but then Ender eventually in sequels then saves the queen and repopulates the race and apologizes for everything humanity did. Without the twist, it would have literally been a carbon copy of Ender's Game in my mind. So in that sense, but the twist was very telegraphed. I saw it coming a mile away. I was kind of hoping it wouldn't be like that, but it felt very much like it was very set up.
I mean, yeah, you're right. He does telegraph it. I wasn't really sure what it was going to be. It's not even an accidental war. I think humanity straight up tried to first strike the planet. So, yeah,
I think that was my major gripe, where it's like, oh, they're attacking us because we tried to nuke them. I'm like, why would we try to nuke them?
Because Nixon.
Because
that's my issue. Is like, would Nixon and the military really be that stupid?
Well, I think the excuse they made up was that the aliens in colonizing Europa made a base which was shaped like a swastika.
Yeah.
And they thought that this culture, who has been intercepting all of our communications for very many years, chose out of all the
It's-
symbols, instead of the peace symbol, the swastika symbol.
It's
So-
almost like we read an entire book where that was that twist as the first book this year, except that people weren't stupid and started trying to nuke them.
Like I said, it's kind of a cheesy book. So if you read this book as if it was more of a Starship Trooper movie kind of feel, like it would feel pretty campy and kind of fun. But if you approach it from like a kind of a serious point of view, like, oh, let's analyze this, like generals and admirals and like, you know, all like, the command structure and all sorts of stuff, you'd be like, oh, this story is just like written by like a sixth grader, like, you know, trying to do like video game, like, you know, fantasies of delusions of grandeur, like fifth grade English class, like, what if I were a superhero? That's the book that just came out of my mind in the last 60-minute period.
Yeah, in fact, let me use that to segue to the next topic, which we've already kind of touched on already. The glorification of gamer culture, where, you know, Charlie, you're saying like only the man who is the best at the video game can be the one to save the planet, and that, along with the kind of the more hard to grasp, like, you know, why does the plot feel like it does? It kind of makes it like, I think this is very clearly a young adult novel with a young adult target audience, and not really one that can necessarily apply, kind of be a novel that, you know, both, you know, they can target both of the audiences well. I feel like Ready Player One, as much as I'm not like, I didn't think that novel was super amazing necessarily, but I think it did a better job than this novel did specifically, just by the sheer feel. But let's talk more about how this game handles gamer culture. So, you know, like Charlie said, like I think he literally says at some points where it's like, I just don't know what to do with my life because I'm a video gamer, and that's like the only thing I know. And this book is like, well, sure enough, there is a life for you out there, and I don't think reality is like that. I mean,
well, okay, let me give the book a little bit more credit than it deserves. Like, if you imagine yourself back in high school, I think many of us probably didn't have our future courses perfectly set out. Like, I did not know exactly what I wanted to be back in high school. Like, my current career is very drastically different from what I thought I would be in high school. But then again, I also have to think about all the people who join JROTC, who end up enrolling in the military very early. Their life course is kind of similar to the Zach Lightman, where it's like they're in high school and they end up in the military somehow. I normally kind of thought that, yeah, this is kind of a little bit too convenient, but it does touch kind of along the themes that I think a lot of high schoolers, especially nowadays, feel like they don't necessarily have a plan coming out of high school, because nowadays, if you get an undergraduate degree, it doesn't really get you very much. You almost have to plan for a graduate degree if you want to have, like, you know, break through the glass ceiling and blah, 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 blah. There are plenty of undergrads who either go to startups or, like, for me in undergrad, like, I was a biology major. It's like the only thing I was qualified to do after undergrad was wash petri dishes and glass in a lab, and probably not even do any experiments in a biology lab. So in that sense, I kind of thought, well, yeah, I can see how people feel a little bit adrift during high school, especially if you're not really super applied in school, which it seemed like he wasn't.
I mean, like, on one hand, the plot basically is another version of, like, what's The Last Starfighter?
yes.
Where it's just, like, cheesy and campy. You know what? I'm totally fine with that. But on the other hand, it does just have, like, you know, it's the same thing in Ready Player One, where it's just a bunch of random references just to be like, you catch that? Whereas, but, like, Ready Player One, as much as a lot of the way the book was structured, like, actively made me hate the book, at least it kind of it built a world to justify it being, like, obnoxiously constantly that. In this one, it's kind of like, oh, you have the military, but they're just writing the cake is a lie on the walls cause references. Which is like, yeah, fine. It's like it kind of reminds me like an anime when your military is run by a bunch of 13-year-old girls. Because it's like, all right, your military is now a bunch of random gamer nerds who it's like, well, because they're obviously the most skilled at the thing that this war requires.
Okay, well, part of me kind of thinks that after the success of Ready Player One, the publisher went to Ernest Cline and was like, hey, you know how you put a lot of references? How about you throw a few more into Armada? And that's kind of how they felt to me. Like, they're just kind of thrown in at kind of odd angles. Like, hey, I was like walking through the base and I happened to see that. Wasn't really directly like integrated into the plot in the same way that it was for Ready Player One. So
yeah,
I feel like there kind of might have been some, you know, last second edits there to kind of throw in a little gamer lulz or something.
I don't know. I think the guy revels in 80s culture. I feel like between him and I think the credits in my book said that like the idea was his brothers or someone from his family or something like that, or his cousin or something like that. So I feel like him and many of his friends are very much into the gamer culture. And I don't think Ready Player One was like some editor said, oh, more game references. And I don't think Armada was the same thing. I think he's just that guy.
Yeah, I feel like the book itself, is like he mentions it a million times. It almost is a reference to these cheesy like Ender's Game, Last Starfighter. Like it's almost just a replay of that. Whereas I feel like the book is almost itself an excuse to put in all these references. Yeah, it's like sometimes I have a moment where it talks about like kleptomaniac time traveling dwarves. I was like, is that a Time Bandits reference? Why? But my reaction isn't, oh, that's cool. I recognized a Time Bandits reference. My reaction is just, why? So the one thing is, I remember in high school, I took a class where we read Ulysses, which is just supposed to be this giant egotistical summary of all of culture up to like 1900. And so reading this in Ready Player One I'm like, oh my god, is this our Ulysses? Is this like our just trying to jam all the culture? And it just made me sad.
If this is our Ulysses, we did a worse job in our generation than they did.
I think it's maybe accurate for an 80s gamer, perhaps for 90s, our generation perhaps, but really I don't think that real new gamers are like this anymore, to be honest.
I don't know if like a 10-year-old that's
jaded.
Yeah. Like would a 10-year-old gamer reading this novel be like, this is like retro, man.
Oh,
there's no
They'd be
Fortnite
doing
in this
Fortnite
game.
dances.
The references, obviously. Yeah. But like I don't think that they think about accessories the way that we do. I don't think they think of 3D shooters and space piloted games. These are sort of nonchalant things. I think a lot of gamers are it's more fragmented than that. I think they're interested in different things.
I think that's also kind of the weird thing is it's like, oh, the most popular game is Alien Invasion, Flight Simulators, and Ground Warfare. I'm like, maybe the Ground Warfare?
Oh, hey,
but
okay. This is a great segue because if you don't know, I work in the game industry. There is no way these games are the most popular games on the planet.
Yeah,
there's just no way. This is the way that they're. I mean, it's more just like if you need to play for months to get promoted. If you notice when you play in a free to play MMO, the first thing that happens is you freaking level up, and you know why? Because that keeps people coming back to play more. When you have to oh man, I'm like a private in Armada, and like I log on every day, and I'm just not that good, man. I've just been a private for months. No one's gonna be doing that and playing.
No, they want pay to win. I need a better.
Where's the microtransactions in the Armada game?
I think somebody would play that way. I'm pretty sure I've seen you on Star Trek Online as an ensign for how long?
No, everyone in that game, it proves my point, John, because everyone in that game are fleet admirals.
It's kind of like at the start of the episode, Stavros was like, Charlie playing his games, preparing for the military. I'm like, all I learned from playing games is either A, you just like stab some weak monster the entire time to level up in role-playing games, or B, in like Ninja Gaiden, that I would die instantly 47 times in a row and society would be doomed.
Actually, more accurately, Charlie would just leave a quarter on the B button on his controller, and then he would just level up overnight while he slept.
Like a true 80s gamer.
I mean, I have done that.
So let's move on. So, and John, this is a special one just for you. I was like, you know what? I'm thinking about this book. I'm like, John used to weigh in on this.
You couldn't help but think of me.
Yeah, it kind of made me a little uncomfortable, actually. I was like, ooh, John's like in my thoughts a little bit. But anyway, so...
He's inside me.
Anyway, so in this book, there's a lot of, it's drone on... hot drone on drone action. There's drone operators, or the operator singular, as you find out later on Europa, and all the human drone operators. And, obviously this is humans are reverse engineering alien tech, and then because, the aliens are trying to escalate the conflict there. But is having this kind of drone on drone, in your opinion, as, in your profession, is this practical? Like, is humanity having millions of drones even cost effective / possible, as they have it in this book?
I guess it probably depends. I mean,
If Amazon was fighting this war, it'd be all drones.
In general, I would think that the drone, a drone battle might make sense in an offensive sense. But once the third waves were coming, like for instance, it depends. It's really the right answer.
It's your best guess.
It is. I argue that it is. I think that maybe is the most realistic aspect of this book because the cost to train a very good pilot is highly expensive, and if you lose one of them, then millions of dollars and tens of 2 or 3 decades worth of training all down the drain, and you've got nothing but rookies left. Having a drone that you can fly in a realistic way with no lag. Now, if we want to talk about realism, talk more about lag and like the bandwidth, because I don't think the wireless connection from Earth all the way to Europa is that freaking good, unless Comcast has been laying down fiber optic all the way to Europa.
Well, they did talk about how they have faster than light communication, which is exactly what would be necessary because there's a noticeable lag, which is the reason why it's actually pretty difficult for us to operate drones on Mars using standard communications because there's a significant lag. But let's say they have instant communications and they can contact, and then it's not jammable. That's the other factor. It's not jammable because that's a problem with.
And it's not line of sight, like the moon got in the way and you lost control of your drone.
Yeah. Let's assume they figured all that out. Then it's really a cost-benefit ratio. You kind of hit on it, Stavros, right? I mean, are the drones really cheap? I mean, could you make a cheaper defense system, like a laser defense system? Why send our own drones after their drones when you could just I don't know. You could just hit him down with lasers or something. It just depends. But he can say whatever he wants because it's his book.
It's specifically like, let's say, you got the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and you sit them down and you're like, guys, how about this? All drones, no humans. And all drone operators. I'm
sure. I'm in no way knowledgeable on the subject in any innate way. Just so that if anybody's listening, this is real information. I would be highly suspect if somebody in the Pentagon didn't sit down and say, "Hey, everybody, all drones. What do you think?" Surely somebody from Lockheed or Boeing or somebody sat down and said, "All drones."
They do bomb defusals if they can with drones. Like, there's so many applications where they try and use... they try and use remote warfare because they want to reduce the loss of life. Because one of the things that people hate the most in warfare is, how many of our boys died? Like, unfortunately, rarely does our country ever think about how many enemy combatants or civilians have died. It's more along the lines of how many of our own have we lost? Case in point, like Vietnam. Like, why did we stop? Because we said, we've lost too many guys. Not so much that we've killed too many Vietnamese people, unfortunately, but it's more along the lines of what are our losses? Now, if that was all drone warfare and we just lost robots every day, it'd just be an issue of money. And money is something like, slush funds, you got other things to take care of money. But loss of human life, you got people who are waiting for their boys and girls to come home. And if they lose their sons or daughters, you get very unhappy families and very unhappy voters.
Yeah, one of the parts of the book I actually liked was the whole explanation of like the financial crisis and everything was actually like a facade to just actually fund building all this stuff, where kind of faked recent history to be like, no, this is how it really worked. And so, like, speaking of the money, I was like, that's kind of clever.
So all drones all the time, right, John? Definitely in no way connected to the Pentagon, John.
No, I have no knowledge, but having a drone warfare makes some sense. I would agree with the statement before about how we certainly have we certainly don't want to see our own combat men and servicewomen injured in battle, but I also think that there's another component to here which makes it difficult to conceive of a large armada of because simply it's impractical. It's actually quite difficult for us to find enough recruits to join the Air Force, at least in an all-volunteer sense. So I think that's the other component. It's not just like, we want the best gear for the U.S. military strategy is to have an unfair fight. That's true in almost every dimension of the way that we design our military. We want it to be an unfair fight where we have an advantage. That's true. But also I think it's just very difficult for us to find qualified candidates to.
But there was a risk of zero death, like only a drone died. I think there would be a lot more recruits in the military. Like, hey, you get free college education if you go and pilot some drone, and if the drone dies, no sweat, we'll build you a new one. Like,
Actually,
I think a lot of people would be much more willing.
I think it might be the opposite because we kind of have that. There are all drone pilots, and it's actually quite difficult. I think, if I remember correctly, to recruit for those.
Oh no, I mean, I feel like most college guys who join the military, or college girls, are joining as grunts, like foot soldiers, because they need the money. And one of the things that holds you back against that is the imminent threat of death, because you have to go through 6 tours, 3 tours, however many tours as a grunt. If you're highly educated and you're a drone flyer and there's zero risk of you dying, I mean, you can get those people signing up for the military all the time because there's zero risk to them. I think one of the major drawbacks and one of the reasons why the military has to incent so much is because you have so much to lose in certain positions.
Man, I wish we could keep going on this, but we're running short on time, so let's go straight to final thoughts. I'll go first. Overall, I didn't enjoy this as much as Ready Player One, and even Ready Player One was kind of a mixed bag for me. The tonal shift, as I mentioned, kind of going from the like, lol, video games are real to like, damn, people are dying by the millions, was kind of a little crazy. The twist did a little bit to like help that. That was kind of like a very Star Trek style twist, which, surprise, I'm on board with. But overall, the flavor was kind of self-indulgent, and the tone kind of a little bit too juvenile for me to really enjoy fully. But I did appreciate some of the gaming references, and the idea of a game becoming like more significant does appeal to me as a gamer. Unfortunately, it doesn't really match up that well to reality. But so overall, kind of mixed bag. Definitely not as good as Ready Player One, in my opinion. And let's go to Charlie. Surprise! Hi, Charlie.
Okay. Hello. Yeah. Like there's parts. Like it was fine. It felt like you said reading a young adult novel where it was kind of just inoffensive with the twist at the end made me roll my eyes. But it wasn't as compelling or interesting as Ready Player One, but it also didn't make me hate it like Ready Player One. But there's just weird stuff in it where, like, did anyone notice that in the second half, once they introduced a bunch of military people and, like, the other players, they killed off literally all of the new male characters and none of the female characters died? And it's just...
They were wearing red shirts.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. You're right.
It's like, yeah, okay, fine.
How about you, John? What do you think?
I like the writing style. I was one who liked Ready Player One quite a bit, so... I like the writing style. I enjoyed that. I thought that it wasn't as good, and in some ways it was sort of a. I agreed with one of the points before. It's a little bit of a rehash. It's a little bit of an adjacency to Ready Player One. This book, I kind of like the '80s references. I like the style, but it was too predictable and it was too transparent, and it just wasn't enough meat in the character story, to be honest. So I found it disappointing. I guess that's the fairest opinion I can give. Yeah, I found it disappointing. I wanted more, but I didn't get it.
You wanted another Ready Player One, sort of.
I kind of did, yeah.
Ready Player 2, the sequel.
I guarantee you that's coming at some point. All right, Vincent, go for it.
If I had to rank this book in the realm of the sci-fi literary world, the closest analogy you have to this book is Ender's Game. And I have to disagree with Charlie because Charlie characterized this book as a young adult novel. The fact that there's so many 80s references almost makes this a middle-aged men-women kind of novel. Because if you were an adolescent kid and you picked up this book, you wouldn't get most of the references. And I feel like it's kind of like, Stavros is saying, you read a period book, and if you don't get it, like 50% of the references, then the book is kind of lost on you. So if I had to compare it to Ender's Game doesn't have all that pop culture in it. It just has straight up sci-fi. It's way more accessible and more timeless in my mind than this book is. This book is, compared to Ready Player One, I feel like it's a little bit lacking. And one of the reasons why I have is because I think that the writing is somewhat lazy. It's very like pop, fun, kind of video gamey, but all the characters blur together. If you read any given dialogue line from the book, it's hard to tell if it's Zach or his dad saying it or someone else saying it because everyone who's alive in the book is an 80s fan. So they're all making references to the 80s, and there's no one guy who's like super good at the 80s. All the girls, all the guys. There's a soccer mom in there who's super good at the 80s references and everything like that. And you're just like, wow, this is really weird. Like, this is supposed to be like everyone's enrolled in the military, and everyone in the military plays video games somehow, and they're all video game fans.
Yeah.
He's kind of randomly assigning lines to whoever's turn it is to speak. So in that sense, I didn't really enjoy the book as much as Ready Player One, which I felt was a little bit more coherent. The characters were better defined, and in terms of like everybody was somewhat more unique. But the book is entertaining. It's like, it is kind of an updated version of Ender's Game, though I still feel Ender's Game is like light years beyond this one. But I mean, if you like the 80s and you're like a middle-aged guy like the rest of us, this book is kind of fun to read. I kind of wish it was more, like everyone said, but
Yeah.
It's kind of like a B- book, honestly.
Okay, I think you should start grading the books from now on.
Yeah, I can. I'm Asian. Like, I at least know what
It's
A
not
plus
an A.
is.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much. And with this episode, we're actually wrapping up our second season. Dun dun dun. We're done for a little while. We're going to take a few months off, and we're going to be back early next year, hopefully, with a bigger, better, and I can only assume sexier season 3 in 2019.
We're gonna have a girl on our podcast, aren't we?
I mean,
Star
let's not go that far.
Who's getting voted off the island?
I'll say goodbye, everybody. See you in 2019.
This might be the last time you
Bye,
hear my
everybody.
voice. Please don't
Bye.
forget me.